Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. I have just spent a week with the all-new, all-electric Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck. And as you can see, I've been out here getting it dirty today in the desert. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to go for a drive together. And then I'm going to tell you what it's really like to live with. Before we get out on the test drive, let's talk about what we have here. And right out of the gate, I got to tell you that, I'm probably one of the last journalists in America that has had the chance to test drive and do a review on this. So if you've been watching reviews on this, you probably already know everything about the truck and everything that's been said. But you're going to get my take on this today, and not so much a lot of the data, but what I like about it, what I think sets it apart from the standard F-150. And the first thing is the fact that this is a bit more expensive. This is an XLT with quite a few options. The extended range battery, as tested for the 2022 model year, we are at $75,000 and some change. Now, that doesn't hit me too high just yet because you can spend that much or more on a gasoline F-150, albeit one a little bit more equipped. From the side profile across the parking lot, this may look like just about any other crew cab short bed F-150, but there's a lot of little details that set it apart. And on this XLT, some equipment that I do want to point out for you here. First, let's look at the front end. This is where the big differences are. Unique hood, unique fenders, unique fascia, unique face features, LED headlights. That big, huge signature bar all the way across that wraps around the headlights is really the thing that makes this thing visible as a Lightning coming down the road day or night. And of course, there's no grille at the front because why? There's no big radiator there for a gasoline engine. In fact, you press the button on the key fob and boing, you have the front. Now, obviously, this is not news to you if you watch Lightning videos, but I like this feature. It's good use of that space. It's washout. It has power outlets in there, lots of power outlets, and storage underneath the floor for your charging cord, things like that. And so that really is the big differentiating feature up front. Down in the lower bumper, there is a little radiator down there, and that is because the electric motors and the battery is water cooled as well. So all of that cooling goes down there to that grille. Coming around the side, you can see this has 20-inch wheels, a little bit more of an aero design. Electric vehicles, they like to do that. And of course, the power port right up here above that, and that's where the charging happens. That's where the magic happens, as they say on MTV. And this one also has these nice grippy running boards here on the side. Pretty sturdy ones, I might add. I like them because my boots don't really slip around on them. They've got a nice grippy surface on there. From this angle, let's talk about the fact that this is the same cab and body structure that you're going to find on any other F-150 out there. And they're mounted to a fully boxed truck frame, just like every other F-150, although this is a unique frame. Looking underneath, you can see a big difference there, a fully independent rear suspension with the electric motor mounted at the back, just like the one that's mounted at the front. And you have, of course, a spare tire, so it is somewhat traditional, but the point being that this is a conventional body-on-frame truck, unlike a lot of the competitors out there that are going to be coming on market, the Chevrolet Silverado, the GMC version, the Hummer version, and of course the Rivian. Now Rivian's kind of got a hybrid body on frame, but it still is a combined cab and cargo box structure here. You can use a lot of the same accessories, a lot of the same gear that you would bolt to any F-150 if you're accessorizing this. Looking at the cargo box, you can see that we have inside of it the 9.6 kilowatt power system, which is great. Lots of outlets there, different kinds of outlets. And that's something that with the battery that this has on it, you can literally power a job site, a campsite, your cabin, power tailgate on this. Now, I'm not sure that, I don't know, it's kind of gimmicky, but it's cute. Seems like it'd be just easier and quicker to open the thing manually, but if you don't want to go to the trouble, there it is. Looking at the back, there are some differentiating style factors here. These big LED taillights, which have some sculpting to them, are different than the standard F-150. And then, of course, you got the Lightning logos on the rear of the cargo box and down on the tailgate. If you've ever sat in an F-150, you're going to find the interior of the Lightning very familiar, especially in this trim grade, the XLT, because much of the dash and the center stack is identical to that of the standard F-150. When you step up into the higher trim grades, or you have the optional systems here that have the large portrait style glass screen, then things start to look quite a bit different. But here, what you will notice that's different than the standard F-150 is some of the trim and the treatments. They're a little bit different here. The finishes are different, a little bit more modern, a little bit more mid-century modern, I would say. That's what I'd call them. They look like they could be on furniture in the 50s, the finishes. That said, modernity is what we have in terms of equipment here. The digital instrument cluster ahead of me is a nice big size, fully customizable, and you can display all sorts of things there, from your trip computer to what station you're listening to, as well as an off-road screen that gives you pitch and yaw and things like that. Full controls on the steering wheel for the infotainment, audio, and trip computer. And the center stack here, as I said, very much similar to what you're going to find in a lot of F-150s. It's got hard controls down below the main infotainment screen for the HVAC and the infotainment system itself. So if you like a more traditional set of controls over a glass touchscreen, this is likely the trim grade you want to stick with. Down on the center console, a lot of storage here, just like a regular F-150, a big bin up front, ports down below. And this has a feature that I really like that's available also in the regular F-150. You can put that shifter down and over comes this, and you've got a really nice workspace here. Great place for a laptop, great place to fill out paperwork, whatever you need to do if you're using your truck as an office or a home theater. I do worry about motorized things like this in Fords, though. That's just, it feels like it's going to break someday. I'm not picking on Ford. It's just anything like that just seems like, it's going to break. Storage inside here, big enough for a 12-pack of, like Coke or Diet Coke, something like that. Nice, large space down there. Anything's going to fit in there, obviously. Cup holders everywhere. And the quality materials in here is consistent with other F-150s, which means it's better now that we have the latest generation, but there's still some cheap hard plastics here right next to the nicer trims. The seats that I'm sitting in, these are a very nice sturdy cloth, a little bit more contemporary than some of the cloth you might find in other models, and they're comfortable. They're power operated here, and I do have heated seats in this particular trim grade. The rear seat, just like the other F-150 crew cabs out there, has got a nice high seating position, lots of leg room, and you can fold those seat bottoms upward to give access to storage down below. This one has the lockable storage bin down at the bottom, and amenities back there are pretty good. There are vents at the back of the center console. There are ports for charging, as well as a regular 120 volt outlet. Of course you'd expect that here. So this interior, for the most part, I'm very impressed with. I like the fact that it feels just like every other F-150, and because of that, it gets the same score as every other F-150, 4 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is essentially the top-end version of what you're going to find in the gasoline F-150s. It is the large 12-inch screen. This is not the large portrait style screen you're going to find in higher end versions of the Lightning, but it still has a lot of content here in terms of features, capability, and the sound quality is actually pretty good too for it not being the top end system. Looking around on the menus, they all work very well. I do find that they're laid out in a very make sense sort of way, and finding the features you want, the settings you want for the truck, whether it be drive modes, getting to the navigation so you can find your charge station, energy, lighting, all of the different things, the major features this truck has are easily accessible here, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. And of course, you have the connectivity through Bluetooth, you've got Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all of that stuff, in addition to satellite radio. This is a system I'm very impressed with. It works exceptionally well, as sync systems have come to do. I'm very impressed. The system gets 5 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, let us go for a drive. And we're going to start out here on the trail in the desert. This is out by the Superstition Mountains here, just east of Phoenix. Beautiful place out here. I love to drive vehicles out here on state land because it's just, not only is it beautiful, but there's some great roads to test these vehicles on. in the case of the F-150 Lightning, I really just wanted to show that, you know, just because it's an electric truck doesn't stop you from treating it like one. So if you work on a farm, if you live in the country on a dirt road, or if you just go camping in places like this, or just like to spend the day playing around on trails like this, what I have found here is that it's every bit as capable as any other F-150. Now, it's heavy. This vehicle weighs a little bit over 6,500 pounds. And that's because it's got this giant battery pack underneath, about the size of a queen-size bed, plus the two motors, one front, one rear, and a fully boxed frame. They didn't just put an electric motor under the hood. It's got a completely different chassis. Independent suspension at the front, independent suspension at the rear. And because of that, it does have a very nice ride out here on the trail. Reasonably good ground clearance, although I wouldn't call this an off-road variant of the truck. It'll be nice if they do that for us, but the thing is all of the powertrain components do have skid protection, and it's built in a way that you can actually bring it out and use it like a truck. Because it's heavy, it feels a little bit more like, I don't know, an F-250 almost, as far as its overall weight and the way it rolls over everything. The suspension I have found is pretty firm, but compliant enough that it doesn't beat you to death. I would point out that because this is not an off-road version, I am finding that it's easy to bottom the suspension if you don't treat it with a little bit of care. So you don't want to blow and go like you're driving a Raptor. Now, off the trail, now we're on the Desert Washboard Road. And this is a place I love to bring vehicles because it's a great way to see how well bolted together it is. This vibrating surface can really rattle a vehicle and make it feel like a pile of junk, even if it's expensive. And so what I'm finding here is that even with these 20-inch wheels on this one, which are really more for street, it's got a pretty smooth ride out here. And the thing is this road is actually a lot rougher than it normally is when I test out here, because the monsoon season here in Arizona has been pretty robust. And so a lot of this road has been washed out and washed over, and there's a lot of gullies and just ripples in this road that aren't normally here. So I've had to slow down to not get beaten to death over some of this stuff. It's a lot rougher than normal. But my point is it's handling it very well. The F-150 is a truck that hasn't always performed well on this road because of the aluminum body structure. And with the stiff suspension, sometimes it feels a little flimsy. I get a lot of rattling in the structure, rattling in the dash, things like that. And I am getting a little bit of that here, a little bit of rattling in the dash, a little bit of rattling in the door frames, but nothing major. So yeah, this is a vehicle that performs quite well off the pavement. You can take it out into the rough and get where you need to go. And the off-road qualities this has, even though it's not an off-road variant, you do have a locking differential to the rear. You can hit that on the screen right there. But you know, the thing is as fun as all this is, driving through the mud and going over the rocks and out here in nature, the reality is that most people never ever go off the pavement. So that's really where we ought to be. Now we have magically changed locations to my favorite back road. And here, well, it's just a little bit different. Cattle guard, cattle guard, cattle guard. This is a piece of road that actually has some pretty noisy pavement. I like to bring a vehicle out here to see how good it is for noise abatement and how well it feels at speed out on a back road. What I'm finding here, as well as what I found this week, is this drives very much like any other F-150, albeit one that feels a little bit heavier. It's very quiet, obviously. We have no powertrain noise whatsoever, so really the only noise that we can hear right now are the tires on the pavement and very little bit of wind noise. In fact, our 70-mile-an-hour freeway test brought up a number of 54.5 decibels, the quietest truck I've ever tested, so it's very quiet. Driving down the road, this has a nice solid feel. The steering feel is, well, about as good as any F-150 is going to be, and the ride has a little bit of a float in the front end, obviously stiffer at the back because this is a truck. Got a corner here, throwing it in at pretty good speed. The roll stiffness is pretty good as far as side-to-side roll and pitch for cornering, so it's a pretty stable chassis. This has the max tow package, which means it can tow 10,000 pounds Payload on this one, 1952. Maybe not as much as you think it might be, but that is because it's carrying a very heavy battery around. Even though it's every bit as good as an F-150, an F-150 still has a little bit of that good old American truck feel to it, which means it's not the most precise in the way of steering feel. And I did notice out there when we were off-roading that the suspension, albeit completely independent, doesn't have a lot of travel in bottoms easily. So this chassis gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now it's time to talk about the powertrain. As I mentioned, this has its own unique chassis, an electric motor at the front, electric motor at the rear, and this has the extended range battery pack. So that means this has 580 horsepower and 775 pound-feet of torque going to all 4 wheels. That's really a recipe for wow. So if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So let's come to a complete stop. We are truly out in the middle of nowhere, nobody around. Are we ready? And go. Woo! And 60. Okay, my hat just got flattened back here. And 80. All right, so this thing will light the tires up if you do it the right way. And of course, 0 to 60 comes in right around 4 seconds. At least by the seat of my pants. But it's silent, right? You could totally speed like crazy and the cops are never gonna look up from their coffee and their donuts. They're never even gonna hear it. And that is the beauty of electric vehicles. So power obviously is a lot, it's seamless, and it comes on like that. And cruising down the road at 45, it'll push you back in your seat. Now I'm doing 90. It's that easy. It's that easy. Now, of course, my range just dropped about 5 miles, but it does that in a gas car too. You mash the pedal like crazy and you're gonna lose a little bit of MPG. And in that way, this has 320 miles range with the big battery. And the window sticker says 70 mpge, which is an MPG equivalent. So, you know, MPGE is kind of smoke and mirrors, quite frankly, but you use that to compare it to other vehicles who are also using that measure. So that is a benchmark for comparison to other vehicles, electric, not necessarily comparing it to gas. I have found that in the miles that I have driven, the amount of electricity that it's used seems to be right on par with what that says. Cattle guard. So this is a powertrain I'm pretty impressed with, I gotta tell you. So yeah, powertrain gets 5 out of 5 stars. Woo! Now that we've looked at it inside and out, we've taken it for a drive, gotten it dirty, I have to tell you that I am impressed with this vehicle, not just because it's electric, but because this is just an F-150 that happens to be electric. It drives, it behaves, it does everything just like an F-150 except make noise, you know? And we talked about a lot of those things when we went for the drive and when we sat in it. I'm impressed in that way. And the big thing to really think about here when we start talking about value, which is our next topic, is the fact that yes, it's just like any other F-150. It sits like one, it smells like one, the dash rattles like one, but it costs a little bit more. Now, yes, you can spend $75,000, $85,000 on a really expensive EcoBoost gas-powered F-150, but they have a lot more stuff on them, right? This is an XLT that's 75 grand. And I'll point out that if you look at a 2023 model and you build that on the Ford website, almost identical to this one, you can't quite get exact because the package changes, but if you put all the same equipment on it, it's 10 grand more for 2023. They jack the prices up pretty good. So my $75,000 price I'm talking about here is kind of moot. It's really $85,000 if we're honest, because 22 sold out. If you want one, you got to order a 23, and you might be lucky if you even get that. So if you're going to buy one, be prepared to pay. You're going to pay for it, right? So $85,000, $75,000, either way, for the sake of our value argument here, we're comparing this against the Hummer EV pickup, the Silverado EV pickup, the Rivian, and GMC will have a Sierra EV, and those trucks are all in the same price range. So yeah, you can jawbone about Ford jacking up the price 10 grand because they say it costs more to build it, and it probably does, but they can also sell it for more because they already sold out for 2022. Why not jack the price? But everything you can possibly compare this to costs the same or more. So in that way, in a relative sense, in a competitive sense, the value is very good. The quality, the warranty, all that stuff is industry average. There's nothing above or beyond or below here. So I'm going to put value at 4 out of 5 stars here because it could be better. It could be less money. And someday it will be, I believe. But for today, this is a vehicle you buy because you want it, not because it makes the best financial sense. And maybe you buy it because you're a municipality, you have to have an electric vehicle or something to that effect. But chances are, if you look at this price and one of a comparably equipped gas-powered F-150, there's a pretty big difference, okay? But nonetheless, 4 out of 5 stars for value. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for the review. Very highly rated. And it's because it's an F-150, right? They're the best-selling pickup truck out there for decades, and now it's electric, right? It's not an electric vehicle that happens to be an F-150. It's the other way around. F-150 that's electric. Now I'm repeating myself. So I think we're done here. If you like what we do, follow us on social media. All of our channels are listed down below. You can see our latest video right there. But better yet, I want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there because we've got a lot more electric vehicles coming up. So either way, stay tuned.